As India makes every effort to become truly future ready, there are few people who have a greater influence on that than Amitabh Kant, the CEO of NITI Aayog, whose influence can be felt across the board when it comes to digital India, to the startup ecosystem, to figuring out vaccinations, to providing all the technology that is really required. So Amitabh Kant joining us now. It's a great pleasure, sir, to have you with us. And you've really been at the forefront of leading the charge to make India future ready. Do you think it's time for India now to figure out how best to rebrand itself as a technology superpower or a country that's really technology future ready? I mean, you have done so much work in branding from Kerala's, God's only country to India's incredible India. Would you extend that to India itself?
So Vikram, we've done an enormous lot as far as the digital world is concerned in the last 4 to 5 years. We've really made a huge difference. We are doing a lot in terms of making India go green, in the context of renewables, in the context of hydrogen. And I think that story is still unfolding in the next 3 to 4 years. You will see India taking the global lead in this area as well. Branding of India has a lot to do with the reality on ground. It has to sink in. And I think all this transformation that we are carrying out in terms of being digital, in terms of going green, in terms of getting future ready, all that needs to be branded together. I think that story needs to be told in a very sophisticated, polished manner. But I think we should wait for that greening story of India to unfold. And then we should brand India in the next year and a half or two and really put India onto the global map, which we are doing on ground as it is. So I think both must sync, and that story needs to be told, and in a very positive, futuristic manner 2 years down the line.
So let's just look at where you think India can already do some rebranding. Now let's just come to technology and digital India. You're one of the people who was really pushing UPI and the financial stack and other technologies. Do you think the world is now accepting that India is a place where you can get innovative technologies, different technologies, and it's not just as people working as coders in the back end? India can actually come up with the technologies and the design and the products which can make India a leader.
So let's start with the Jam Trinity in terms of the India stack, from biometric onwards in terms of the e-locker, the digital signature, everything. I personally think we've really grown and evolved hugely. A couple of years back, I was working in the fisheries sector of Kerala. We were trying to transform the lives of traditional fishermen. We gave them new boats, new crafts, new nets, but opening their bank account was a nightmare. Know your customer used to take about 9 months. We are able to do this now using biometric in less than a minute. So that's been the paradigm shift. Let's look at payments. I mean, I've not used my credit card or I've not used my checkbook for the last 2 years now. I just use my mobile phone payments, and many young Indians are doing this. So we made a huge, massive quantum jump as far as the UPI, the Unified Payment Interface is concerned, linking up all these banks. And, it's been just transformational. If you look at the fintech movement, many of our young unicorns have really transformed the insurance space or even stock markets. Many Indians have got access to this market thanks to many of our young unicorns. Yeah. So huge transformation as far as the digitization is concerned.
One of the possible effects of that, if you remember 15, 20 years ago, there was a great fear that there's going to be a digital divide. And because some people will have access to technology and others will not, it'll actually make inequalities worse. Do you think paradoxically 15, 20 years later, it's been a bit of the reverse because everyone has access to a mobile phone, everyone has access to cheap data, or affordable data. Everyone can therefore use that to take their own lives forward.
Yeah. So, one of the programs I implement here, Vikram, is the Aspirational District Program, which is, looking at some of the most backward districts of India and transforming them. We don't call them backward, we call them aspirational. And every time I've gone to an aspirational district, I'm convinced more and more that India doesn't need physical infrastructure. India only needs digital infrastructure. I mean, look at what has happened. Earlier we used to send all our schemes money to states, and states used to send it to district and to panchayats. And there was huge amount of leakage. One of our prime ministers said that actually only 15 paisa out of a rupee reaches the poor man. Today, we are doing this across 526 schemes. So I think what you need is only digital infrastructure. What you need to drive rapid transformation is technology, and Indians are well equipped, and there's no digital divide. Actually, the rural areas will be transformed much more quicker, much more faster if we are able to push the limits on technology.
Push the limits on technology, you're saying. Now, of course, new technologies seem to be coming up almost every month or every couple of months. Look at, when we got our heads around AI and blockchain and things like that, now you've got the metaverse suddenly being spoken about and things like that. Do you think India has what it would take to be the leaders in this sort of technology, the metaverse that has just been announced?
We are creating 3 unicorns a month. We've been able to do this because our young entrepreneurs are tapping into this data and using it to technologically leapfrog. And that is what India needs to do. We need to leapfrog in all these emerging areas of technology, whether it be AI, whether it be metaverse, whether it be artificial intelligence, because India has the size and scale of data. India has the use cases which no other country has. I mean, the Silicon Valley can be looking at driverless cars, but if you were to find a solution to the challenges of water, raising agriculture, productivity, or even vaccination, there's no better country than India, simply because of the size and scale and your ability to use data and bring in use cases.
So I have no doubt that technology will keep on advancing at an exponential pace, and I also have very little doubt that yes, entrepreneurs will be able to take advantage of that. I guess one of the questions is that for the government, how does the government and the government's policies and the government's practices and other systems in the country which are not technologically driven, how do they keep pace with this exponential change?
You need a very light touch regulation. You need constantly to use our entrepreneurs to grow and prosper, and therefore my view is that your policy regime should be pro-innovation, light touch, and progressive. And progressive, you should benchmark yourself against the world's best and even better than the world's best.
But that might well be happening in certain areas, especially in digital areas where changes can come. But there's always this feeling that you have this, first world India, digital, AI, metaverse, all of this sort of stuff, which sometimes runs against judicial cases that take 15, 20 years to resolve, land records that are impossible to dig out. So sometimes the new India and the old India hit off again, run against each other. And sometimes that old India can hold back the new India.
Yeah, but the only way to solve those challenges, and India has many of those challenges, the only way you can solve your land issues is using satellite for land records. If you continue with your old practices of doing survey, the field surveys, etc., I mean, that technology is bust. So you need new technologies. Look at what satellite has done to land surveys. You don't need it. So geographical maps is what you need to do. And India has liberalized that regime. Similarly with drones, I mean, look at it. If you control them, that's not the solution. You need to liberalize this because that's the area of the future. You need to handle rogue drones through a separate policy of an anti-drone policy, not by saying that I'm going to ban all drones. That's not a feasibility anymore. And that's why I'm saying that constantly you have to keep abreast of, or look at judicial cases. I don't think it's possible, physically or humanly possible, to bring down reduction of cases without 2 simple things. One is without using artificial intelligence and machine learning. you cannot reduce the number of cases. Number two, I think you need to use on land records. 70% of the cases in India relate to lands, and therefore we need to crack this huge challenge of using satellite data for land. If you're able to sort out all those issues of land records, etc., and ownership of lands through land records, a progressive perspective, you'll be able to sort out all these challenges of judiciary as far as pendency of cases is concerned.
Great. One of the key and most important things in all of this will become trust, and digital trust in particular. People have to trust the system. They have to trust digital records. Yeah. They have to trust that if I'm putting my land papers into a digital locker, it will be secure. They have to trust that their data will be looked after and data will be protected, whether it is Aadhaar or something else. What can you do to make sure that people get that confidence in the system, and also make sure that the adoption of trust and the adoption of technology is built into the system and not bolted on as an afterthought?
So I think, Vikram, with increasing use of data, increasing, as people say, let me give you live examples, because I use my mobile for payments, say for instance. Some others people use it for stockbroking. Some more people use it for buying insurance, all through mobile. In all these cases, people do it out of trust. Rarely have been. The challenge here will not be a challenge of trust. The challenge as we grow along will be the challenge of cybersecurity. Yeah. And India needs to equip itself for cybersecurity. Indians will trust the digital mean. I mean, that's more than adequately proved now with the way the UPI payment system has boomed. And look at what UPI is. I mean, it does more transaction than Amex today, which is 45-year-old company. This is just a 4-year-old, UPI is just 4-year-old. It'll overtake Visa in the next 2 to 3 years.
But as you said, the problem is that you need just one or two bad people who will sort of take advantage of it, or some hacking cases where people's data is being stolen, or outright fraud being perpetrated by some people, which could shake that trust. So therefore, it's important to build that and to start working towards that.
So India needs to really work a lot on cyber security so that future challenges, we are future ready to meet those challenges. And that's critical to my mind.
All right. You were mentioning green as we started off. Very ambitious pronouncements have been made by India at Glasgow as to how we're going to go, all the ambitious targets that have been set out for the environment. How do you think India is going to do it, and to what extent do you believe that new technologies and AI and the rest of it will be an important factor in that?
Yeah. So Vikram, first of all, let me say that India's targets are really, really ambitious. Yeah. India is the only country in the world which has met its NDC targets, which it had committed to in Paris. Only country out of the G20 countries. That's number one. Secondly, India is a great believer in delivering on short-term goals, whereas the developed world has been constantly changing the goal post. So you are not able to achieve what you've done in Kyoto, then you go to Paris, then you go to Doha, and you keep changing the goalposts, and now you talk about net zero. So the important thing is to pin down these countries on short-term goals rather than just net zero. Net zero is important, but for India to achieve it, it's very clear. The Prime Minister has spelled out that 50% of the installed capacity will be non-fossil fuel, and that means that we'll have to really push for solar renewables in a very, very big way. And the other thing the Prime Minister has pushed for is the green hydrogen, that we import today 160 billion worth of fossil fuel. 160 billion, which in 10 years' time will double to 320 billion. Now, if you have to move away from fossil fuel, you have to really use solar energy to crack water and create green hydrogen. What is very important to understand is that electricity, you can go solar on electricity, but that's 20% of the energy. The rest of the energy is in refinery, it's in long-distance transport, it's in steel, it's in fertilizer, where you can't, you use coal. So you have to move away from fossil fuel to, it's electricity. It's not electricity which is used in these areas, it's coal which is used. So you need to, or gas, Therefore you need to move to non-fossil fuels, and green hydrogen is the solution. But the important thing to understand is that the Western world took 40 to 71 years to move from peaking to net zero. We are going to do this in a very, very short period. And therefore, India's targets are really ambitious, they're audacious, and India can only do this by really making a massive technological jump, and that is what the private sector has to do. The private sector in India, they will grow in values, they will be able to attract capital, they will be able to export in future only if they go digital and they go green. And without going green, without going digital, Indian companies will lose out enormously. And that's the real challenge which corporate leadership must take.
So when it comes to corporate leadership taking it, or startups, you are correct in saying that there are virtually 3 startups becoming unicorn every month in the last few months. How do you tell young people, be entrepreneurial, set up a startup? How do you tell established corporate houses that invest in India, believe in India, bet on India, and we will take care of any of the old problems or the hassles or the other issues that you may have?
So look at the last couple of years, Vikram. I mean, all these companies which have really grown. The 34 unicorns are because of what has happened to India in the digital world. The Digital India movement and the push by the government. And let me also tell you that the GST is all digital. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, PMJAY, 500 million Indians insured, health insurance, all digital. It's bigger than the population of USA and Europe put together. The entire income tax, 98% people in India paid income tax digitally, and these are not known facts. And therefore, the government has acted as a facilitator and a catalyst in this, and it will continue to do this as far as the policy regime is concerned. And that's why the government has pushed for green hydrogen, the government has pushed for renewables, the government is pushing for electric mobility, the government is pushing for storage in batteries. And therefore, all new technologies the government will push for, and push for India making a massive quantum jump forward in all these new and emerging areas of growth.
Right. Amitabh Kant, thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikram. Great pleasure talking to you.